You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to WSUW 91.7 FM. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I'm excited to welcome to the program Sergei Davidis, who is a human rights activist and a politician in Russia. And he is joining us from Russia via Skype. Sergei, welcome to the program.
Glad to hear you. Thank you.
Well, let's begin kind of at the crux of the problem that I think you're dealing with, that I think some people in America would like to understand better, and that is, can the situation in Russia be improved or changed by Russians themselves? Can the solution come from within the country, or does it have to come from outside? Is it going to take some kind of a major military development, or can people in Russia peacefully change their rulers?
I would say so, that for sure we should not rely on somebody from abroad who comes and changes our authorities. But on the other hand, I think that it's rather difficult to expect that Russian society changes and decides to change the authorities in Russia, because actually everything is under control, and you know that main TV stations under state control, and investigating and police systems are also absolutely under the control of the supreme authorities. So there is a tradition to obey, I would say so. So it's difficult to expect that society gather and change the supreme authority of the country. But I think anyway, our authorities depend on population, and they try to have some support from the most part of population, and they anyway rely on this support, and it's possible, and real prospects of change are in situation when some factors will be are united. I mean that population become much more unsatisfied with the authorities due to economics and to some other reasons who cannot be foreseen by the moment. From the other hand, probably some external difficulties, both economical and probably military, should also take place for this situation. It doesn't mean that total war will bring to occupation or something like that. But anyway, local wars in Ukraine and Syria can have a negative development for Russian state, and in this case, for sure, it would be unpleasant for them and will decrease their support. And the third important and necessary factor which should take place is some split, to say so. I'm not sure I use the word right, but some split in elites of the country, when some of members of this elite decide that it is more prospective to unite their efforts with some groups of population which are not satisfied with the authorities, and change the political system and supreme authorities. It's the most possible and the most prospective way of change of situation. For sure, the society itself is not a subject of the only subject of change. The society cannot change situation alone, but together with some external events and with some members of ruling elite, I think it is possible.
Sergei, this is very interesting because you are combining, you're listing 3 points that I think make a lot of sense, which is one, if population will become dissatisfied; two, if there's some kind of a military complication; and three, if the elites, as you said, split, which is, I think, exactly the right word. So, you have those three, and out of those, you say that elites splitting with Putin is actually the most likely one to occur. Is that how you see it?
Oh, excuse me?
Is that how you see it? So that the elites are the most likely ones to force change, so some kind of a castle coup?
I think I would be able to explain in more details in Russian, but if describe situation in short, yes. But when I speak about some external events, either military or economical, I expect that these events will mainly influence public opinion, the level of support of the authorities inside Russia, because now people are used to situation they have, and even decreasing incomes of families don't really change the level of support seriously.
All right. Well, that shifts us to my next question, which is, how do Russian people feel about the corruption among the Russian leadership? Recently, just a few days ago, a movie came out revealing that Dmitry Medvedev, who was a president for a few years and then gave back the power to Putin, it was exposed as an extremely corrupt politician, even though he was portrayed as somebody who might be more Western-minded and more liberal-minded. Still turned out some would say he is just as corrupt as the rest of them. How do Russian people respond to these kinds of revelations?
I would say that Russian society is not something whole, and there are different strata in the society. For sure, some westernized 10 or 15% of population are actively unsatisfied with this situation and demand some investigation, some punishment, and so on, but it doesn't happen. And the state actually even doesn't seek for their support. The state knows that there is some minorities who doesn't support it, but it's enough when 80% support the state and the policy of the state. But the main part of society, for sure, is angry with this situation. They are rather poor, and when they are shown these castles, palaces, and so on, they get angry. But they are not ready to act somehow to express their mood. And the second thing, that they believe that it's quite normal. They don't like it, but it is normal. uh, they do not believe that system can differ from what they are shown, and they know that if they are in position of Medvedev or something like him, they will also do the same.
Do you feel that this is perhaps due in part to the fact that Russian people may not feel like they're able to change anything, and therefore they explain to themselves and others that this is normal?
I would say that for sure there is a problem that they know from their own experience and from experience of their parents and grandparents that they are not able to change anything. And for sure to have some psychological comfort, they try to explain to themselves why they even not try to change. But the second problem is that this crony capitalism we have in Russia taught people that it's normal situation that the power and the money are the same, and if you have, but mainly, especially in Putin's year, not money gives power, but otherwise, official powers give you money, and nobody doubts, not nobody for sure, but the most part of population have no doubts that it's quite natural to do this way.
This is it's a great simple formula you describe because money does not equal power, but power equals money.
Yes, yes.
All right. You're listening to WSUW 91.7 FM, The Edge in Whitewater, Wisconsin. This is Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I'm glad to have on the program today with us Sergei Davidis, joining us via Skype from Russia. And Sergei is a human rights activist and a politician who's been active in Russian politics for at least a quarter of a decade. Let me ask you, Sergei, the last area I wanted to cover, and that is the status of political prisoners in Russia at this point. Doing politics, being engaged in politics in any sort, whether you are left, right, whatever, as long as you're not with Kremlin, creates a lot of challenges for people. So, how are political prisoners doing in Russia these days? There's been some people released. Some people even say that it's a thaw, although that may be premature. What are your thoughts on the status of the situation with political prisoners in Russia?
Actually, one of my important activities is that I'm the chief of a program of political prisoners support in Human Rights Center Memorial. So it's even my professional activity to get information and try to support political prisoners. And in our list of political prisoners, there are 101 persons by the moment. But for sure, only a small part of this number are the people who are some opposition activists and so on. The most part of them are people who are persecuted due to unlawfully persecuted with political reason of the state, with some political motivation from the state. But if we speak about some people who are persecuted for their position, for their activity, mainly people who write something in social media are persecuted, I would say so. Not only, but the main part of people who are persecuted for their position are people who has written something in Vkontakte, mainly in Russian social media Vkontakte. But there are also some people who participated in some public activity, but there are not so many opposition activists in Russia, and these repressions are aimed to frighten the population. They do not have an aim to take to the custody every person who is against the authorities, every opposition activist. They want to taunt and to frighten all the people. And for example, Bolotnaya case had obvious aim of this kind, and the law according to which Ildar Dadin was taken to prison also had the same. And when they persecute people who write something in internet, they also have the same aim to frighten people, to make them be careful and not to do a lot against the authorities.
Now, out of those 101 people that you have on your list as designated political prisoners in Russia, how many are there because of posts in social media? Even approximately, is it 2? Is it 100? Is it?
No. I think it's something about 5 persons, because there are a lot of people who are taken to prison for that, but some of them anyway actually called for some violence, and in the most part of these cases there were no real social danger, and it's obviously unfair to take them to prison for that. But anyway, we do not consider as political prisoners persons who used violence against personality or called for violence against some social, national, religious groups. So when I speak about 5 persons, these are persons who hasn't called for violence, and for their peaceful calls or comments in social media were taken to prison. Probably between 5 or 10, I would say so. And a lot of people are persecuted and sentenced to fines or conditional terms, but not taken to prison really. So the quantity of people who are persecuted for their opinion is much more than quantity their share who is in our list of political prisoners.
So does it mean that social media in Russia is a nice and friendly place because people are afraid to be arrested for saying something wrong?
For sure. Actually, there are few channels of feedback from the society to the state. These are elections for sure, these are free media, these are some public events like rallies and picketing and so on, and these are possibility to write on internet. And the state is closing each of these possibilities of channels of feedback. And actually internet used to stay the last relatively free channel of feedback, of this feedback, and somehow it even stays such a channel, because anyway there are millions of people in social media, and a lot of them write something that is not too pleasant for the state, but they, as I said, they do not persecute everybody. There are a lot of reasons why they choose one person or another, but anyway, only small part of people who write something against the state are persecuted, I mean, by means of criminal code. But anyway, everybody who writes in Russian segment of internet and social media in Russian internet should be careful and is under potential threat of criminal persecution.
Sergei, I wanted to ask you just one more question because of your professional work with prisoners and so on. Have you ever been visited a prison outside of Russia, and how does it compare with prisons in Russia?
No, I have never been to prisons outside Russia, but for sure I have seen some films showing them and have read about them. I think that if we compare with Europe or United States, conditions in Russian prisons are very bad. Actually, people cannot get any medical assistance. They are very badly fed there. It is both some tradition that criminal term in the prison should be very difficult for a person. And this is also takes place due to current crisis, because actually there are shorts of budget in prison system, so it's difficult for this system to provide proper conditions. And for sure there are a lot of violations, a lot of violence, and the rights of prisoners are often violated. And for example, even Ildar Dadin, who was well known in Russia and who had support and had defenders, it differs him from the most part of people who are in Russian prisons. Anyway, he was tortured, and his rights were roughly violated, and for sure it happens in much wider
Scale
with people who are not so well known and do not have such a support.
Sergei Davidis, Chief of the Political Prisoners Support Program for the Human Rights Center Memorial, human rights activist, politician in Russia. Thank you so much for joining Rashkin Report, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
You're listening to 91.7 FM, WSUW, in Whitewater, Wisconsin. You're listening to Rashkin Report.